Welcome, fellow horror hounds, and welcome to the latest episode of Talk and Stalk, your unholy home for horror. I'm your host, as always, Barry, and today I'm joined by friend and fellow film buff, the sadistic Samuel.
Thank you kindly, good sir, and thank you for all of you joining us today into our dark descent into the infamous, the notorious, the unseen, and indeed the obscene.
And quite recently, me and Samuel actually did a podcast on 1981's cult horror movie, The Evil Dead, a film that really needs no introduction whatsoever to horror fans. And we thought it would be perfectly fitting to follow up with Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn, released in 1987. Now, let's just quickly get into this right off the bat. Evil Dead 2, technically, even though it's called Evil Dead 2, technically isn't a sequel. Now, Bruce Campbell has actually even used the term requel for this, because I believe they actually lost the rights to the first movie. So it's not really, it's kind of a reimagining, if you will, clearly on a much bigger budget than the first movie. So it's, to Samuel, it's kind of confusing, isn't it, to some people, because obviously the movie starts off, Ash going to the cabin, but this time he hasn't got his friends, it's just him and his girlfriend, and I think that was confusing for some people at first.
Oh, most certainly, especially if you're not familiar with everything. However, as you said, because of the rights, they couldn't really touch on much in relation to the original film. So they had to essentially, well, the first film was pretty much remade within the first 5 to 7 minutes of Evil Dead 2. So I think, as I mentioned beforehand, though, you could snip off the last shot of the Evil Dead, remove the first 5-7 minutes of Evil Dead 2, and it would carry on in the same universe. Then again, there was a similar issue with Army of Darkness as well. That said, though, what they did with Evil Dead 2 to sort of make up for it, if you will, it's still pretty decent.
Yeah, I think Evil Dead, it's Evil Dead 2, certainly, without a doubt, it's very much a fan favourite among many horror fans. There are people out there that actually prefer Evil Dead 2 to the original. I know that Bruce Campbell, it's his personal favourite of all three films. I mean, this is the movie that turned Bruce Campbell into a star. I mean, this is the film that cemented Ash as one hell of a character in this movie. Cementing himself in that role. And, of course, this film, as I said, they lost the rights, and it was actually distributed by Dino De Laurentiis, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, who was basically persuaded by Stephen King to actually finance this movie. Stephen King was a massive fan of the original Evil Dead, so this is obviously a film that was on a bigger scale. And, the idea of a sequel was actually being thrown around during the production of the first movie. And it was, intended to be kind of a direct sequel. But because they lost the rights, it's like you said, they basically had to kind of refilm the opening of Evil Dead 2. Obviously, only Bruce Campbell actually appearing, I believe, in the opening to that. They couldn't actually use any of the other cast members. With this film as well, he brought on Scott Spiegel. He contacted Scott Spiegel, didn't he, for this?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
And Scott Spiegel, of course, had actually collaborated on quite a few of their earlier films, their Super 8 films. And Scott Spiegel had actually, he's kind of, in a way, responsible for injecting much of the humour. It was actually decided to actually have this film as kind of a less of an out-and-out horror movie, but to have a lot of humour, to make this film a lot more humorous. Now, this film is definitely a horror comedy, without a doubt. Do you think the humour works for this film, Samuel?
Well, when you consider that Sam Raimi himself is a huge fan of the Three Stooges, it felt more at home. That's not in any way disrespect to the Evil Dead in the slightest. It felt more natural with the comedic elements, that it's so, you're having fun whilst you're being scared, and it's scary to have fun as well. And for the, all the slapstick elements in it are fairly, very effective. I mean, there's some behind the footage stuff, and even they say, this conceptually sounds really scary. And when it's pulled off, they go, well, it's not scary. It's just, it's funny. And that's the point. things that are supposed to be scary are actually pretty well done, especially, well, many examples, which we'll certainly dive into.
Yeah. I say Scott Spiegel, Sam Raimi actually reached out to Scott Spiegel, and as I say, yeah, they collaborate on Super 8 films, and most of their films had been comedies. And, of course, that humorous element had really been injected into Evil Dead 2, and Spiegel actually felt that this should be more of a comedy film, a lot more humorous. And, as you said, very much echoes of the Three Stooges, of which, yeah, Sam Raimi is a big fan of. Bruce Campbell, I mean, that's one of the things the film was commended for its humour, that it managed to be really funny. And Bruce Campbell really sells this film. He does a fantastic job.
I think there are other elements as well, because the blood, for example, is, it's certainly a little bit more diverse in some of the colour departments. It's a bit different in America. I think some of that was to increase its accessibility.
Yeah.
However, no, yeah, you're absolutely right. With Bruce Campbell, I think his the acclaim that he received for his performance, I think, has been next to universal.
Yeah. He's certainly someone that needs no introduction whatsoever now. It's ironic, really, Ash Williams, but I don't believe his surname is ever actually mentioned in the trilogy, is it?
I think it is on a badge.
In Army of Darkness.
Yeah, however, even then, I mean, he's referred to as like Ashley by, say, Linda. Well, both Lindas, if you will. So, I'm very happy for people to prove us wrong with that and show us an explicit example.
Yeah. But with Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, it's a film, as I said, this film was bigger, thanks to Stephen King, his love of the first movie, and that this film having a bigger budget to it. There's great stop motion and practical effects in that. I believe Greg Nicotero was one of the many people that actually worked on this film as well. And getting to what you were talking about with the blood, because obviously the first film was quite controversial. Obviously it was dubbed a video nasty, and again I think they wanted to really try and avoid an X rating for this film. And I do believe that they actually came up with a plan to try and avoid an X rating for this. Because I think Dino De Laurentiis actually had a deal with the MPAA that prohibited him actually from releasing any X-rated films. So Raimi and crew actually set up the Rosebud Releasing Corporation, which kind of allowed them to distribute it without the MPAA's input. But it was something that they kind of created themselves. It wasn't an establishment prior to them creating it. So it was a way of trying to get around any kind of, MPAA interference. This film really takes no time in getting going, does it? I mean, this film actually moves along at a pretty breakneck pace.
And I think it's a pace that I know some people weren't too fond of, which to me, I don't necessarily understand, because it does have its nice suspenseful moments, and it certainly does linger in a complimentary way, sort of setting up the atmosphere, because even if it is comedic, it is still, a horror film as well, especially after the wee bit when Ash gets possessed. Dawn hits and he passes out. It very much takes its time with establishing the creepiness of the woods that he is surrounded in, so thinking that the evil's still out there. When will it strike next?
Yeah, it's I actually love the pace. It's just a roller coaster ride of a film. It's just hyperkinetic. The film rarely lets up, and as I said, at its core, it's a comedy movie, but certainly there's plenty of horror elements. It doesn't obviously take itself too seriously or anything like that. Just talking about one of the standout scenes in this film, of which there's many. And again, it kind of comes down to comedy. I absolutely love the moment where obviously his hand becomes possessed. And obviously he's smashing the plates across his head in the kitchen, which I believe was actually improv. That was all done on a single take. Bruce Campbell, and I just love that. And of course, the scene where he cuts his hand off with a chainsaw, and I just love that moment where the hand actually gives him the middle finger as well.
After it's been covered, scurries away. It catches. What is it? It's just tapping its toenails, like that catches the mousetrap, and even Ash going ha. flicks the bird, absolutely hysterical. It's the bit afterwards when he shoots the hand that had me laughing in absolute stitches.
Oh, the bit where the geyser of blood comes out of the wall.
Oh my God, Joe. I was watching that at 1 o'clock in the morning. I was roaring with laughter. It was absolutely superb, completely unexpected, superb slapstick, absolutely fantastic. Bizarrely enough, though, the blood originally was going to be yellow if you look at behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
Yet it's red, though. So I don't know where exactly that's come into play.
And again, I don't know, this almost gets me onto another point. I'm going to quickly go back to that. It's very reminiscent, as we know, in the original Evil Dead, the 81 film, of course, a nod to Wes Craven with the Hills Have Eyes poster. And of course, we get another nod to Craven in this, with Freddy's glove actually making a very small appearance, a kind of blink and you'll miss it moment. And the blood geyser coming out of the wall reminds me of Glenn's death in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Do you know what? I should have thought of that. That now you said that comparison, it makes absolutely perfect sense. It's the work shed, the Freddy Krueger's glove. It's in the work shed sequence, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so, because it changes in Ash versus Evil Dead. It's sort of in the actual cellar, in the fruit cellar in Ash versus Evil Dead.
Yeah, it's funny, really, because the scene we're talking about with the massive, and then it goes black, and then it kind of like suckers back into the wall. Is apparently Bruce Campbell was horizontally on the floor, and they poured gallons of fake blood on him. God knows how much they got through. I've never actually looked into that, but a hell of a lot, I'd imagine. The scene was filmed with the camera turned 90 degrees and that, and apparently so much blood, he actually felt like he was drowning, and he was apparently producing red snot for the next couple of weeks every time he blew his nose. He got absolutely drenched with that stuff. But they were completely committed, like with the first film. Now, with this movie as well, it wasn't as challenging as the first movie. They didn't have quite as tough as a task as the first film. But there were problems with, let's just say that Ted Raimi, Sam Raimi's younger brother, obviously stars in this film as Henrietta in the fruit cellar.
Yeah, so Ted Raimi has absolute moments of greatness, not just with Evil Dead 2. I think throughout his filmography, whether it be Hoffman of the Spider-Man trilogy, whether it be Skinner, Henrietta, though, is absolutely superb. And like the absolute issues they had with not just creating it, but some of the issues, I think, did you read about the sweat that was sort of contained within
exactly. And you can actually see it on screen. Actually, yeah, he could barely move. He was sweating. He was completely drenched in sweat wearing that suit. And yeah, like you said, there's actually, I think, a moment in the film where you can actually see the sweat coming out of him.
And I think it makes perfect sense. I think on the one hand, you just think, why would someone do that? And you go, no, it makes sense, because Sam Raimi has always been an eccentric filmmaker. If you read up all the stories that... did you watch My Name is Bruce? I have.
Only seen it the once, though.
So you remember that line was, "Aren't you scared? You don't. You ever met Terror, mate? You haven't worked with Sam Raimi." Sam Raimi, I think we know some of the stories, whether it be smacking Bruce over the head with the branches, keeping his head under order for a certain period of time, or even smacking Toby Maguire in the head with a bag in Spider-Man 2. He's always been interested with his actors, and of course, he would be even worse off with his younger brother. And especially when you look at behind the scenes, you can see that Ted Raimi is absolutely exhausted, and yet the performance is still so damn good.
Who's in my fruit cellar?
Someone with a fresh soul.
Yeah, and of course, we'll swallow your soul. We'll dead by dawn, dead by dawn. There's just so many great moments, great lines in this film, and of course, we got the now iconic Groovy in this film. Bruce getting the chainsaw, getting back to the severed hand as well. There's a great little in-joke. There's a nice little lacing of humour there. The book that he actually puts on top is A Farewell to Arms, which is a great little kind of joke there as well. But yeah, another moment in the movie. Again, some great kind of stop motion. And that, of course, he buries his decapitated girlfriend, and she comes up doing a dance to, obviously, earlier scene in the film, he's playing the piano and she's doing that kind of dance and that, and then the undead version of her is actually doing it as well, removing her head and all that. It's all just gleefully fun, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the stop motion because I think I mentioned previously before with the other podcast with Roger Ebert. That was one scene in particular, the stop motion of her uh, decomposed body dancing in the night is is striking, and he was quite complimentary towards that. And speaking of Linda, Denise Blixer again, she gives an absolute game performance when she is possessed as a deadite, especially when we go to the workshed bit, the mixture of the absolute terror, even now we have your darling Linda soul.
Yeah.
Oh, it's superb and absolutely another committed performance. I think what I like about her performance is it's very different to Betsy Baker's performance in The Evil Dead, who's more creepy, more childlike when she's possessed. Whereas in this one, it is far closer to the archetypal Deadite that we would all come to love and understand in sort of later segments. However, I think this one, no, absolutely delivers it superbly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest as well, with this film, with the Deadites, there's a Deadite obviously at the end of the movie, the giant Deadite, the massive head that comes crashing through, and it kind of gets back to the different blood. We get green blood in this film, don't we? We get red blood, and there's also blue blood, if I recall.
Yeah, definitely, especially at the end. I think the term is there's a certain. I think it's not pumpkin head. There's apple head. There's an actual term for the Deadite at the end of it. So again, it's just trying to create the sense of absurdity rather than say nastiness. Yeah. So it works though. That's the thing. Most of the time, you would think you got to be joking. This couldn't work, and yet it still works.
Yeah, I think one of my favourite moments in the film as well, another great scene is, that's the thing, this movie has so many great moments to it, so many great lines. I just love the moment where Ash goes to sit on the chair and it breaks, he falls through and the whole room's laughing at him. It starts off with the deer on the wall, and then it's the lamp, and you see the books, and the whole room is laughing at him. And I particularly love that little shot where he's looking at the lamp and he's going up and down with the lamp whilst laughing at himself.
Yeah, God, you mentioned that as well. It's like, it's just bonkers.
No, sorry, go on.
No, it's just fine. It's just like it's just one of those moments, and it seems to be it's the laughing deer head that almost everyone I've spoken to, it's the one thing they take away from it. So that says a lot, because I think, as we spoke about with The Evil Dead, there's that scene with the tree that almost everyone remembers and seems to bring up. Whereas with Evil Dead 2, it's either groovy or the ending, or more commonly, the laughing deer head.
Yeah, just love. I mean, this, they really play away. You really feel for him. I mean, Ash, the stuff that he goes through, especially with this movie. They really play with him. I mean, there's another scene that I like where his reflection comes out of the mirror. He's trying to tell himself that everything's fine, he's fine, and his reflection comes out and he's like, we just cut up our girlfriend with a chainsaw. Do you really think it's fine? And I just love that whole kind of surrealism of it. And of course he's strangling, but then he's kind of strangling himself, and there's just that shot just afterwards where he decides, he looks away from him and then he looks back as if to say, he's going to come out again or something. He's testing him. It's great. And the thing is, right, I mean, originally, I'm sure you know this, the original kind of idea for this was basically, it ended up laying the groundwork for Army of Darkness. The original plan was Ash to be in medieval times, which obviously we did get with Army of Darkness, but there was a lot of different ideas being thrown around for this film. And Crime Wave, the 1985 film, actually turned out to be a commercial disappointment and a critical disappointment. And it was really during that film, the production, that they actually decided to start writing a potential Evil Dead 2, which eventually we got in 87, a couple of years later. But yeah, with Evil Dead 2, it's a movie that I believe there is a lot of footage out there, actually. There's a lot of scenes, much like with the Evil Dead, that were left out.
and that some of them are available. So one of the key scenes that I remember seeing was with Linda and Ash. So this was after the little lovely moment of with the necklace, and they have a little bit more of a dance, a little bit more of a a passionate sequence. Not necessarily ooh la la. It's just more of the sweetness with it. So the footage does exist. I think, like with Army of Darkness, you tend to have like made-for-television versions. So they may snip out some of the violent bits or snip out some of the swear words. However, they may like insert extra stuff to sort of pad up the movie, the runtime, if you will. So they do exist. It's just finding it.
Yeah. I mean, I did read about a certain shot where Henrietta, which, by the way, the tape recorder is actually the very same tape recorder as well, I believe, from the first film. That's one of the few... And, of course, we get the dagger again, don't we? And obviously...
Yeah, which is definitely sharper, certainly more slicker. And we've got one unfortunate soul who very much succumbs to it at the near the end.
Yeah. But, yeah, I did read about a shot of Henrietta actually rocking in the rocking chair. As well, and I believe there was some lighting that was going to be shown on her face, showing the kind of deadeye eyes, which I believe they were an absolute nightmare to wear, them white contact lenses.
Well, they were absolutely completely blind by it, whether it be with Linda, but there's one amazing shot. So you've got Danny Hicks, who plays Jake, another superb game performance. They're both out in the jungle. No, not the jungle, sorry, the woods. And they're trying to look out. You've got that shot where the possessed Ash pops out nowhere next to him. They're both roaring and screaming at each other. Behind the scenes, Bruce Campbell was completely blinded by it. So he turns. So there's a bit. He pops up, looks at one angle, turns his head a little bit because he can hear Danny Hicks screaming next to him. But if you look at behind the scenes, you see Sam Raimi forcing Bruce Campbell's hand to reach out to Danny Hicks because he didn't know where he was.
Yeah. Yeah, that must have been quite the challenge. I mean, you know, I know that Spiegel and Raimi actually wrote most of this film. Now, I didn't know this until quite recently, actually, but I didn't realise they were basically living with the Coen brothers at the time, as well as Frances McDormand and Kathy Bates and Holly Hunter. Did you know that?
The Coen brothers, I did, because I know there was some collaboration with the likes of Crime Wave. Holly Hunter, though, no, that has caught me by surprise.
Yeah, apparently Frances McDormand, Kathy Bates, and Holly Hunter. Now, I don't actually know as to how true this is. I knew the Coen brothers, but Holly Hunter was actually the primary inspiration for the character of Bobby Joe, Danny Hicks' girlfriend in the film. The role was meant for her.
I can see that. I think after I can see that. I think when we considered that she had a very small role in the likes of The Burning, no, it makes sense.
Yeah, because in The Burning, obviously, it was really little more than kind of a cameo, an extended kind of cameo role, wasn't it? You know, she was kind of like, she appears in a few scenes and all that, but, you know, obviously went on to become an incredible actress, you know, an Oscar winner. But yeah, originally, I can't quite remember why she didn't take the role on. But originally, yeah, because, I mean, she was actually in Raising Arizona, which came out the very same year, 87. But yeah, Danny Hicks, as you said, I love Danny Hicks. Now, there's a slasher movie that I'd recommend to anyone out there called Intruder, released in 89, directed by Scott Spiegel. Danny Hicks is in that. He's a major character in that. And I won't go into spoilers in case people haven't seen it, but he really knocks it out of the park, certainly in the final act of the film.
And I think he's always a constant collaborator with the likes of Sam Raimi as well. And he has multiple cameos, whether it be in Darkman or even in the Spider-Man trilogy. I think even in The Simple Plan as well, he has a small cameo in that. So do keep an eye out for him as well. Oh, I think he's also in Oz the Great and Powerful as well. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen Oz Great and Powerful yet. But yeah, I do believe he actually passed away last year as well. May rest in peace. But this was actually his first film. This was his very first movie. I mean, there's actually another scene that does actually make me kind of cringe, actually. It's just a quick shot in the movie. Again, it's just playing it for humour. You know, this film plays a lot for laughs, and it's the moment with a flying eyeball going in her mouth.
You know, that's a love letter to Three Stooges. That's recreating the pivotal moment. So, no, I mean, I guess define cringe. Are you saying cringe in terms of
just
like
an eyeball in the mouth? I mean, it was shot in reverse. I know, just an eyeball going in the yeah. I've got a thing with eyeballs. I know it's quite a common cringe thing for a lot of people. I don't know, seeing eyeballs up close and certainly used as, an eyeball as a projectile.
I mean, it's played brilliantly. I
Yeah.
think it's that's the thing. It's conceptually, it would sound horrific. I mean, it's the sort of thing you'd expect from a Herschel Gordon-Lewis film,
Yeah.
or even Lucio Fulci, for which there are some horrid moments to do with eyeballs in those films. Whereas with this, though, no, it's just. I mean, there's a funny little bit where you can kind of see the line,
Yeah.
that's holding the eyeball. Yeah, it's just part of its charm, though.
Oh yeah.
It's not a point.
I love it. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, I love the moment. Well, I mean, just kind of cringe because I've got a thing with the eyeballs just kind of going down the throat.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me kind of squirm. But I'm sure I'm probably not alone in that. But there's another scene that I love in the movie as well. Another definite highlight, and that is, of course, Ash tells us, he says, woodshed, chainsaw's gone, and his headless girlfriend comes in.
Oh, again, that was the bit that was supposed to sound like really horrific and scary, and came across as a little bit dark. But it's just like the way that they do with the Muppet, and the way when you look behind the scenes with the way it's all put together, you've got a guy who's rolling on the floor as well. You're someone who's trying to make sure that chainsaw's held up. Again, it's just hysterical, especially the way it's just holding. You can see the way the arms are just wobbling while she's just holding the chainsaw as well. It's just dark.
It's great. I mean, giving us them. I'm not sure if they were done in kind of post-production with the dubbing, but I love the fact that he says woodshed and then chainsaw as if we don't know what he's kind of implying. We see the chainsaw gone and that, which is obviously returning from the first film, isn't it?
Yet weirdly enough, the Evil Dead has no chainsaw action in it, even though it has the logo. Yet this it really does. It's almost like it's compensating for the lack of chainsaw action in the original film. It delivers on it, and that final battle with Henrietta.
Yeah,
mwah.
Just great. I love the whole dead by dawn, and obviously she kind of does this final transformation near the end, and that it's just great. Chopping her limbs off and all that. It's just fantastic stuff. And also, onto like Henrietta and that, because let's just quickly, not going to go too much off topic here. It was great to see Ted Raimi reprise his role in the second season of Ash vs. Evil Dead.
That was very much a pleasant surprise, I think, on many a level. And they go even further, dare I say it. Not only is his performance somehow slightly better, they go even further with sort of the over the top, gross out humor in that, especially in the episode 10. There's that wee little bit with the some gross out part there with certain fluids. So no, I think it clearly shows that you just couldn't replace him. So it's great they got him back.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Ash vs. Evil Dead, for anyone that's listening and probably hasn't seen it, I'd assume any Evil Dead fan out there has watched Ash vs. Evil Dead. It's great. It's fantastic. Unfortunately cancelled after 3 seasons. There was a plan for 5 seasons. But, it is what it is. The 3 seasons we got were great. And I think it was a dream come true for Evil Dead fans, perfectly capturing the spirit of the film franchise, the humour, the gore. It was great to see. It was going back to its roots for the most part. It was practical effects as well. And I believe Sam Raimi actually did direct a few episodes as well, didn't he?
He directed the first episode, El Jefe, which was a great starting point for all of it. I think one of the key ones was a director called Rick Jacobson, who I think definitely did some of the more extravagant, some of the bigger scaled episodes, if you will. So that one's worth checking out. I'm glad you mentioned Ash vs. Evil Dead, because there's a small moment in that which links onto Evil Dead 2. There's a very small moment that I love in Evil Dead 2, which is the piano's playing by some spirit, and he takes out the necklace, the charm that he originally gave Linda, and Ash is starting to slowly break down as the piano continues on playing the melody. And it's just that little there's a bit where it's just the chaos has calmed down, the horror's calmed down. You just have this one moment that really captures this little sweet moment, this little sad moment, and that for me, I think that makes a big difference. I can't explain why. It's just nice. It's just like this little moment. It's not just all completely ridiculous and horrific. It has a soft spot.
It does. I mean, to be honest, right, with Ash versus Evil Dead, it just pays a lot of fan service. It really does. Right from the first, it's one of them shows where you think to yourself, where the hell are they going to go next? What direction? Because just when you think you've seen it all, just when you think the show can't get any more batshit crazy, excuse my language, it does it. It manages to. Great stuff. But yeah, and of course, a great kind of nod to, again, Evil Dead 2, like you said, with the hand, Ash's hand appearing again.
Which makes perfect sense, because someone even asked me, like, after the death of Annie Nobley, played by Sarah Berry, the hand disappears. Does it get sucked into the vortex, or is it just free? So, that's certainly an untold story for a very, very long time. Yeah. So, oddly enough, I mean, some people would dismiss the hand returning in the show as, oh, it's just fan service. You go, no, it's just a continuity. Yeah.
It's just a great show in its own right, but if you are a fan of the original trilogy, then I cannot recommend it enough. He's a B-movie god. Bruce Campbell has so many goddamn funny lines. He's just such a lovable. I mean, the thing is, with Evil Dead 2, he really is kind of the unlikely hero. As we said on the Evil Dead podcast, Bruce Campbell, yeah, he's one of the big characters in the film, but it's not like he really has that much to do in the movie. Evil Dead 2 really pushes him into the spotlight in this film.
Definitely. There's a whole transformation, an absolute wimp in the first one, and he becomes the icon, and then he becomes something else, like this sort of American idiotic hero, if you will, in Army of Darkness. However, it's Evil Dead 2 that really solidifies sort of the high point, not just in the film itself, but of course of Campbell, as well as just the trilogy in itself. So they really sell it. It's just so satisfying, the little montage of when they put the chainsaw hand and all together. He revs it up, cuts it at the shotgun, so it's more like the boomstick. It's just this nice little satisfying moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to really quickly talk about another scene that I love in the film, because obviously, we get all the POV, the spirit, which I absolutely love. There's obviously the moment where he tries escaping. He can't. He goes back to the cabin, and it's chasing him through every room of the house.
I get it. It's just absolutely it's absolutely hysterical. I think the punchline for that is he's able to just escape it by hiding in the cellar. The camera's just swerving its head around aimlessly, just like, where's it gone? And then sort of draws out the house and sort of like a weird like groan of annoyance.
It gives up, yeah. It's just brilliant. He's been chased through this whole house, and we basically get a whole kind of exploration of the house, and it loses him, and then retreats, and that. Just an awesome shot. I love them POV shots, right from the original Evil Dead. And let's talk about another scene as well that again is quite, because, as we've said, this film, not a sequel really, kind of a, to use Bruce Campbell's term, a recall. We do get a scene that is, in a way, very slightly reminiscent of a scene from the first, and that's with, her name is escaping me, Danny Hicks' girlfriend, who tries escaping and she's attacked by the plants.
Oh, Bobby Jo, who's played by Cassie Wesley, who again, she certainly enjoys a few bits. And that bit with the tree is interesting, because it shows that they've learned their lesson from the original, that that was a scene that certainly crossed the line. It is quite uncomfortable, I think, because there are bits where it looks like the branch is about to enter her mouth. There's some shots, if you see closer, you can see that some of the branches, the veins of the trees are actually going through her skin. It's quite horrible. Yeah. However, it's not that, thankfully.
No, because obviously, the scene we talked about, obviously the 81, the scene that needs no real introduction. The whole kind of tree rape scene, if you want to call it that, is very kind of sexualized in that, and they just had they had a lot of fun. They had a lot of fun with this movie. And it's what Scott Spiegel was angling towards. They wanted to inject a lot more humour, make it more of a horror comedy, and I think it's one of the very best of its kind. There's very few horror comedies out there, in fact, that I would say that I'm a massive fan of. Brain Dead, directed by Peter Jackson in '92, is also one of my very favourites. I think you'd put that up there as well, wouldn't you?
Brain Dead, I'd say, is worth of a mention. If there's one film that I would dare say is almost in a similar caliber, it would have to be Stuart Gordon's Reanimator.
Yes, yeah, that would certainly be in my top 5 without a doubt. I do, yeah, released in '85. Yeah, one of the very best horror comedies out there. I would definitely agree with that.
See, funny enough, with both Evil Dead 2 and Reanimator, I mean, Reanimator will have to speak to another time. The magazine Sight and Sound, which is more I guess you could say the more academic side of film analysis, if you will, they put it within the top 50 best comedies of all time. That's usually a collection of film critics. So the fact you've got this low budget horror comedy ranked in the top 50 of all time of comedy cinema, that's an achievement.
Oh, it is. Yeah, definitely. It's a film that does have a cult. It certainly does have a cult following. As I said, there are people out there that prefer Evil Dead 2 to The Evil Dead. I believe as well the film was actually filmed in like a small North Carolina town, which apparently had a much bigger film unit there just a couple of years prior. Steven Spielberg's The Colour Purple was actually filmed there as well. Of course, Colour Purple, I'm pretty certain that film is still in the record books. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think The Colour Purple actually has the most Oscar nominations for a film that's never actually won a single one.
That would sound about right. I can't think of any other in particular. I mean, I know True Grit by the Coen brothers got a bunch of nominations, but I don't think it won that many at all. So I think I can't say I know full well myself, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain it was 11 Oscar nominations it was actually nominated for, and obviously didn't win a single one. But yeah, Evil Dead 2, I mean, its reviews were generally very good. I mean, as I say, the slapstick humour was commended. And, the improved special effects. I mean, obviously, as we said, the film had a bigger budget and that. And I think, to be honest, they were more confident with this film as well. They had confidence because they directed The Evil Dead, which obviously proved to be a success. But obviously, I think there was something riding on this film because Crime Wave was not a success.
Well, I think, if I recall, there was a segment in Bruce Campbell's autobiography of Chin's Chill. I think, here it is, and I quote: "Evil Dead 2 was all about licking our wounds."
Yeah.
In relation to the likes of Crime Wave, so I think it's fair to say that they were more enthusiastic, as you say, because of the confidence, and also because they wanted to make up. I mean, Crime Wave is not a bad film. I don't think it's not great. It's one of those where I think. Unless you're a Raimi completist, it's not one that I would say is a standout. However, there are significant moments in it.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, I've only seen Crime Wave once. I mean, obviously, you hear the name Sam Raimi, I think everyone thinks Evil Dead, or obviously the Spider-Man trilogy, don't they? Darkman's a good film, though. Getting back to a film that you mentioned earlier, Darkman's a good movie.
Oh, and it very much captures the comic book essence. If there's one thing Sam Raimi's good at with capturing horror, it's to do with comic books. And speaking of comics, Ash Williams has become very much a superhero of sorts. And you can see that through the amount of comic books. So we talked about this in the previous one.
Yeah.
Like, The Evil Dead seems to be more limited, whereas the likes of Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, Ash Williams is an absolute icon of a hero.
He has, and an unlikely one, because especially if you watch Ash vs Evil Dead, they really do play on the fact that he's so goddamn, what's the word I'm looking for?
Selfish, egotistical,
and just what's the word? Useless in the sense of he's a dumb oaf. He's a dumb oaf. I mean, there's actually a moment in Ash vs Evil Dead that really makes me laugh each and every time. I've seen the first season probably about 4 or 5 times already, and it's where she's trying to give a description of the guy, and he's drawn this. There's a picture of Ash like that, hand drawn, and he looks really stupid, and she goes, "Oh no, he looks like him, but he looks a lot dumber than that."
Yes.
And I'm thinking, seriously, is that possible? Because that's like the dumbest looking man imaginable there.
There's another, and no, they really play up the awfulness. I mean, damn it, that's sort of touched upon in Army of Darkness, but there's more of a selfishness in Army of Darkness, whereas in Ash vs Evil Dead, there is this sort of brilliant idiocy, which is, I think, on the one hand, it's certainly more engaging. However, with the likes of Evil Dead 2, it's sometimes you wonder, is this the same one? Is this the same Ash Williams we've come to love? Well, actually, no. I mean, this guy's, he's a war veteran.
Yeah. On paper, he's not a character you should like. As you say, he's selfish, he's egotistical, but you can't help but love him. He's got such character. And it's Evil Dead 2 that's where it really started in Evil Dead 2. That gave us that character. And with Ash vs Evil Dead, they get the most they possibly can out of Bruce Campbell in that show. I got really excited when that show was announced. And obviously, I know we've got another Evil Dead film coming out called Evil Dead Rise. I don't really know much about that film. I'm looking forward to it, but at the same time, I'm kind of blind because I don't really know much about the film.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up in terms of the sort of expansions of the franchise, because I know, heartbreakingly, Campbell has hung up the chainsaw and boomstick. Yeah. However, he has returned to the role in the likes of Dead by Daylight, and there's a new Evil Dead video game coming out later this year as well. So he may have hung them up in terms of live action.
Yeah.
However, the character, he's still not, he's not going in anywhere just yet. And I think, as we talked about before, Evil Dead, A Fistful of Boomstick, as well as Evil Dead Regeneration, it's this embodiment of Ash Williams that has, expanded into all kinds of media. It's almost, it seems surreal, as we pointed out, the flaws of the character, considering how small this film relatively was.
Yeah,
it's expanded so much into popular culture. It's pleasantly surprising.
Yeah, I mean, we get obviously the Book of the Dead, actually involved in the intro to this film as well. Seeing the rivers of blood and all that. I love the intro to it, and we see all these deadites, these creatures going through that portal. I love the opening to Evil Dead 2 as well. And I said I just wonder, had Stephen King not have liked the first film so much, not have been able to twist the guy's arm, what would have kind of happened? What kind of movie would we have got?
Well, I don't think we would necessarily have gotten a movie. I think, just to touch back on the biography, was it misstep like Crime Wave could have and has put filmmakers on studios' don't bother lists. So the supposed, not even supposed, the unfortunate series in relation to Crime Wave would have essentially have ended Raimi's career before it really had picked up. Yeah,
it's hard to imagine not Evil Dead 2, existing, because, as I say, it's certainly an iconic film. It certainly has a massive fan base among horror fans. I love them almost equally. I think the Evil Dead, the original, maybe just above, but not much. Not much. I love them both for almost different reasons, because, as we said before, The Evil Dead isn't really a horror comedy. There are certainly humorous elements to it. It is kind of hokey and all that kind of thing. But, yeah, I love these two films both. Army of Darkness is the one that I like, but I still really like it. That's the one that I like a little less than the first two. How about yourself?
Well, yeah, it's one of those. It's like, even if it's your least favourite, that doesn't mean that you don't like it. And it's the same thing. I mean, I would say, I think I might be contradicting myself. I think I said that The Evil Dead is either my favourite or the best in the previous one. I think if The Evil Dead is my favourite, then Evil Dead 2, I would say, is the best. I'd say I've watched Evil Dead 2 almost as much as The Evil Dead, probably not to the same severity. However, it's more accessible and it's a better crafted, more engaging film than I dare say about The Evil Dead or Army of Darkness. It has this weird accessibility. Like, even though it's not as mainstream as Army of Darkness, or it doesn't have the same influence as The Evil Dead, it has its own influence in its own way, and it has its own individuality. I think more of Raimi's fingerprints are so much more prevalent in this.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to quickly say as well, because I meant to say this on the first Evil Dead podcast as well, I love the little, we get some of it in the first movie as well, I love the little games that the Deadites play. I love the little games where they pretend to be human again and everything's normal. And in the second film, don't we? We get Henrietta singing that lullaby to her daughter.
Oh, what's the song? Was it? I was going to buy you a mockingbird.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same with Linda as well. As soon as he gets the chainsaw, she's bursting into tears. Please don't, you saw we'd always be together.
Yeah.
And then suddenly snap again.
Yeah.
Your love is a lie. And now she burns in hell.
Yeah.
Actually, that links onto a key difference between Evil Dead 2 and, say, Fede Alvarez's 2013 remake in terms of the nastiness, if you like. Because Evil Dead 2, your love is a lie and now she burns in hell.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Fede Alvarez film, you have Jay Levy say, Mia's not here, you effing idiot, your little sister's being raped in hell.
Mm.
It's that nastiness, I think, which may have put some people off with the 2013 film.
Yeah.
Whereas, again, it has some iffy moments, but it's not as nasty as, say, the Evil Dead. And I think it's that it doesn't cross that line into being ill comfort of viewing.
No, I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit, I like 2013's Evil Dead. The moment that an Evil Dead remake, reboot, whatever, was mentioned, it made me shudder. I'm thinking completely and utterly unnecessary, but I liked it. I thought as mainstream horror films go, it was pretty damn hardcore. Great practical effects, tonally very dark, obviously in comparison to the earlier 80s films. And Jane Levy was just great. I mean, Jane Levy does Traumatized incredibly well, and she did a really good job in Alvarez's next film, which was Don't Breathe in 2016. She was really... Yeah, she's really good. She does Traumatized very well. So I liked it, and I'm a little disappointed we didn't get a follow-on because the reviews were generally quite good, and it actually did pretty well at the box office as well. I would have liked to have seen a follow-up, but of course, it didn't happen. It's not happening, but we are getting Evil Dead. I believe it's called Evil Dead Rise, right?
Which is said to be set in a skyscraper, and there's some talks, I think, Lee Cronin directing it, which... I forgot the film. It was another small film that, despite being predictable, it was a very well crafted, very well acted film. So, in the same mold as, say, Fede Alvarez, they see the talent and they want to bring them on board. Okay. So, it will be interesting. I mean, it's odd to think that, it's a continuation of Raimi's trilogy rather than, say, Fede Alvarez films, and yet there's no Ash Williams. It seems kind of like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
I like the fact they shoehorned him in, didn't they? In 2013's Evil Dead, they shoehorned him in a post-credit scene of him just saying groovy.
And a dramatic stare to the camera as well.
Yeah. I mean, to appease the fans there and that. But no, I'm all on board for another Evil Dead film. All right, it's a shame we're not getting another Bruce Campbell film, but I'll take what I can get. I'm just happy that we're getting another one. I will say this quickly because we're going to have to wrap this up. Is that I actually watched the first episode of Creepshow Season 2 yesterday. It actually dropped a couple of days ago. I'm a big... I thought the first season was quite good. Kind of hit and miss, but, like most anthologies, some segments were clearly better than others. Is the first episode, the second segment specifically... pays a lot of fan service to Evil Dead fans. If you're an Evil Dead fan, you should love the second segment of the first episode. It is great. It's very much in the vein of the original film franchise. Ted Raimi's there. The Book of the Dead's there. I don't want to go too much into it, but it's been created. It's been made for them Evil Dead fans out there. So highly recommend it. I think that's pretty much it. I think we can agree that Evil Dead 2, great horror comedy. It's a film that, even though we might not necessarily prefer it to the first film, it's right up there with the first movie.
Oh, yeah, without no question. I think it's fair to say, one day you may say Evil Dead 2, the next day you may say The Evil Dead, and that's absolutely fine if you're having to toss and turn between the two. Guilty as charged.
Yeah, I think the humour works. I think the gore is plentiful. It has, as we said, some great practical effects and, stop motion, and it's just great. It's just great fun. It's a roller coaster ride of a movie. Evil Dead 2... horror comedy classic, in my opinion. So we're going to say adios for now. Thanks to everyone that listened. And we'll be back again soon to haunt you and torment you. And I think it would only be fitting, actually, if we do Army of Darkness, The Medieval Dead next.
Well, you know what they say, these days you gotta have a sequel, and we also have to deal with trilogies as well, so seems perfectly fitting.
Exactly. And as spoken by Stu Macker there. We'll be back again soon. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Thank you all. Thank you.